Hello, everyone. Today we are joined by Siddhi of Mom Imperfecto, Sukirti of Sipping Thoughts, and Upasna of Kurgaon Moms. And of course, I am Mansi from Kidstop Press. And today we have a really special guest whose latest book shares with us wisdom to survive in a year that has been tough for each one of us in many different ways. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Mr. Devdutt Pattanaik, who's an author, mythologist, belief, leadership and cultural consultant. Devdutt Pattanaik writes on relevance of Indian and world mythology in modern times, trained in medicine. He's worked for 15 years in healthcare and pharma industries before he plunged full time into his passion with over 50 books, 500 workshops, 1,000 columns, and 3,000 illustrations, not to mention popular TV shows such as Devlok and Business Sutra. He has invested 25 years making Indian culture accessible to the next generation and useful in a global context. I've had the privilege of interviewing him once before on Kids and Mythology, and so glad to be hosting this session today for the launch of his new book, Hope. Congratulations, Devdutt. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for passing all of this amazing wisdom that you have for everyone, especially the generations to come.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your kind words.
Wow, that takes a little bit of time to digest, right? So tell us a little bit about the book, Devdutt, and what's your why for writing Hope?
So the idea really came from the publisher, and we were all talking about how we were feeling a little down for various reasons. One, of course, the COVID took its toll. We were all locked in our houses. Many of us were privileged. We had access to resources, but there were many who were not. They lost jobs. They lost family members. The virus itself took a toll on us. And then there was negative news on the social media, people fighting constantly rather than working together in this very difficult times, which I think somewhere you keep wondering, where are we going? Is this the world that we want to create? I know people were talking about migrating out of the country. So these negative conversations were happening around. And, Chiki said that, we need to talk about hope. Let's just talk about it. And we had long conversations on the subject. And I could see that, it was a very personal thing also. And it was, therefore, the conversation became very intimate. And I started saying like how I dip into mythology to get my answers. I always do. And that's what I want to do. So she said, like, why don't we share this with the world? So then, we said, okay, let's put it together, let's organize it and put it in a manner that is easily accessible to people who are feeling down. And as hopefully the COVID is waning, we sort of get some tips so that we sort of become stronger, more resilient, and work towards a better world.
David, as I was reading the first few chapters, that 4-point system that you explained, which is you feel hopeless, you realize abundance, you explore the triggers, you address what can be done, and you try and implement this in the long term. But more often than not, we all find ourselves coming back to number one again. And I love how you've broken this into these chapters. My question today would be whether adults, children, elderly, how do we escape the coming back to one time and again, and how can we really change that across age groups?
I think we must allow ourselves to feel hopeless. It's okay. Because we are human, we are not machines. Even machines wear and tear over time, right? Over time, every machine will have its own way. Every day we have to dust the mirror, we have to dust the house, we have to sweep and swab the house. Our body needs to be continuously washed and cleaned and maintained. And mind also goes through these cycles. There are days when we feel up, the days we feel down. And the question is, how do we create a whole bunch of tools to go through life, hopefully on the positive side with very less negative side? But it's always going to be dynamic. So there will be this cyclical journey. Hopefully our moments in negativity will be shorter and fast, not for too long, and we don't go deep into it. So we will feel sad on some days, but not so sad that we lose all hope. And there will be days when we will be very happy, but hopefully not so happy that we become manic. So that's a natural cycle. I think we should allow ourselves, give ourselves permissions to feel, the fluctuations. That's why coffee is always good.
Right. No, I think absolutely, and I think it's only when you keep allowing yourself to feel like this, you understand what are the triggers that help you come back, and what are the triggers that are actually causing it. So perfect. In I love this one line that you've written, which is this current state where the world feels apocalyptic is not unique. It has always been so. Walk us through a few key stories or a story where we could draw a parallel, especially for people sub 18.
When you read, for example, let's pick up the Ramayana and Mahabharata. Ramayana talks about a prince who's going to become a king. It's almost like he's getting his promotion, he's getting everything he desired on one day, and then he's being told, you have to go to the forest for 14 years. Or imagine Sita's situation where she's living happily with her husband, all is fine, all problems have been resolved, and suddenly she realizes, oh, she's been thrown out and she's been in the forest all alone. And you suddenly, it's these stories are told to remind us that things can happen anytime and things can go wrong anytime. We can never be sure, and there is no guarantee. Or when you read the Bible, they talk about this great flood which comes and everybody is flood and is sitting on this boat and surviving on this boat for several days. So I think these all are ancient stories are designed to sort of prepare us for these eventualities. We don't want them to happen frequently, but they do happen. We fall ill, things go wrong. And I think that's what these stories are. Each story is telling us, things can go wrong and we can make it right.
Right. 2020 saw 1.53 lakh deaths due to suicide and only 1.49 lakh deaths due to COVID. And it was largely because a large part of all of us were feeling not valued or feeling worthless or rightly, like you said, feeling very hopeless about ourselves. And our children felt that way. And there was a lot of isolation for people who were entering the social space, right, from isolation. And I know the story of, I hope I pronounce it right, of Suna Shepa, right, where he's the second son and his father says that you're the one who needs to be axed. Everyone's feeling like that. So what's your message to them, that how do you make someone feel worthy, or why should I as an individual not feel hopeless and worthless?
I think, this is the result of over-individualism and this Western model, which is about being an individual. It's all about me. And therefore, you see it on Instagram, you see it on Facebook.
That's where we're heading. That's really where we're heading. It's very insular.
It's very insular. Now, the trick is to teach ourselves that we exist in an ecosystem of others. And this is the big idea in the book. The big idea in the book is that you are not alone. We are part of an ecosystem, which means we have connections with each other. What happens in mental distress is we feel we are all isolated and alone, which is what social media is aiming at. And let's be very clear, it's aiming at it. The agenda of social media is to wipe out all your relationships so you become dependent on them. And that's the way they're designed, and it's legally permitted to create digital addicts. So we can't fight that force, it's there. So we as families and friends have to work with each other to create conversations, to also pick up the phone and not just be on the WhatsApp group, and chat with people who suddenly go off the radar, who don't seem to be connecting every day. So, if I have a lot of friends who are single, so you get nervous that, "Arey, 10 दिन से कोई बात नहीं हुआ है. I hope he's okay." So you pick up the phone. The way we would talk of senior citizens, once upon a time, you would only talk about senior people ki call nahi aaya, inka kuch ho gaya hai, because they're staying alone. But that's applied to young people also. If they're going into the Netflix world 24/7, that's a dangerous place, because you have to gently nudge them, like anything, to connect, engage, deal with people, talk to people, and allow others to be imperfect. That's the trick. The trick is, like Suna Shepa's story is about a boy who's abandoned by his family because they are thinking of themselves. They're not thinking about him at all. And therefore, in the Rig Veda, he's singing to the gods and saying, "Agar aap bhi mera sahara chhod doge, then kaun bacha mere liye?" And really, God is that ability in us to care for others.
Yeah, yeah. No, brilliantly said. I think it's just at that moment you feel you're the only one, and you start victimizing yourself to a large extent, and that's what we end up doing. Also, you mentioned this in an interview before, and you mentioned this, as part of the book. Today, as parents, we're often accused of bubble wrapping our kids, and you mentioned that some kids that you've met have never been taken a public transport, and we're somewhere raising them to be in a very very privileged entitled position, and hardships, adversity, difficulties in their childhood, the lack of which will somewhere not let them deal with situations as hopefully as well as we did. What's your take on that? How can we ensure that in a privileged position also they know what adversity means?
In the old days, they would tell the princess to go to the forest. The Gurukul was always in the forest. It was never in the palace. So in the Ramayana, Vishwamitra comes to Ram and says, okay, come with me to the forest. Why is this forest? The forest is a place where you can't be privileged. You are just like any other animal and you have to survive very difficult. This is the metaphor for we have to train children. In the old days, they used to have rites of passage. Early days, your mother, your bodily coddle, everybody's taking care of you. But then you would be taken on a rite of passage. You'd be thrown in the jungle without anything and you'll say, go survive for 10 days. If you don't survive, you'll die. So your instincts work on it. Now, this part of education is not being focused on. We are creating this concept of safe spaces and no hate speech and this whole new vocabulary that is emerging. Rather than telling people how to handle hate speech, we are saying we should avoid. No, we don't want to deal with it. I want to protect myself. The world is not, the walls will be shattered. Everybody is going to have these, Ram will be thrown into the forest. And that is something that we need to handle.
Right, right. Also, one of the last questions before I pass on the baton. You've read so many myths and shared so many myths across different countries and different journeys. Which one is your favorite? Which makes you feel this one's all about hope?
So, the thing is, mythology, there are so many, there cannot be one story which sort of dominates everything, because every situation, the stories pop up depending on the situation.
Yeah.
The one thing which always excites me is around the world, they'll always talk about never-ending prosperity, never-ending, there'll be a cornucopia, which is overflowing with food. Or there will be an Amrit, Akshay Patra. Akshay Patra is something which is overflowing with wealth. Human beings are aspiring for a situation where you always get what you want without doing anything. And I think that reminds us about human condition, that everybody thinks मेरे को आसानी से मिल जाना चाहिए. But the thing is, life में you have to work, a relationship, a friendship, even resilience. It's like yesterday I was telling someone, kindness के लिए gym होना चाहिए, because you can't be kind. It's not a switch off, switch on. You have to practice kindness every day, small acts of kindness which enables you to big acts of kindness. Yeah. Just as a six-pack ab cannot be built in a day, which everybody wants to, how do you create kind children? Because if you can't be kind to others, others won't be kind to you. And I think that those things are something these stories are telling me. So these stories are telling me about how human beings want this cornucopia. That's what Instagram and all these things are, right? They are like button press karte hi sab kuch mil jayega, which is why we like Harry Potter. He has a magic wand and everything will be solved. But magic wand is basically not there. There is no magic. There is no Hogwarts. You have to figure it out yourself. We love those stories because we aspire for a world where I can just wave my wand and escape, which is great as an escape, but it also it helps you acknowledge your fears.
Yeah.
What these stories clarify is that you do feel down. There are these monsters which will suck your energy out. There are these things, and you have to. But I don't agree with the way the book is written, because it's a very Western model of fighting. They always want to fight. Harry Potter fights, Lord of the Ring fights, everybody fights. Hamare yahan aise nahi baat karte. You have to engage with people in there are different models of, and everything is not a competition. So that's the one thing which I don't like.
Right. No, I think it's extremely insightful. And over to you, Sukirti.
Yeah, though, Dev, that I love the book. I think it is so timely because, I keep hearing this phrase, and I think you've also referred to it in your book. The why me syndrome. Why me? Why did this happen to me? What did I do? I have done everything right. I'm a devotional person. I'm a good person. So, that I think I really like that part because you kind of address that because these are chance coincidences. These are nothing is being targeted. But I'd like for you to speak more about that because I think that is one word I keep hearing all around me. Why me?
Yeah. See, the engineering world, many of us, nowadays, if you know, the education is divided into STEM on one side and humanities on the other. And if you learn mathematics, science, and engineering, especially, you are told that the cause and effect are measurable and controllable. So that's how science is designed, right? Or it's like you cook, you put salt, it will become salty. You put mirchi, it will become tikha. So it's predictable. And that's what we enjoy about science. We enjoy about technology. Everything is predictable. I know this will happen. But life is not predictable. Life is not predictable. You don't know who you'll be attracted to. You don't know who will hate you. You don't know how it will create jealousy, how it will create anger. You'll be worried, why do people hate me? I'm not a bad person. I have not done anything, but people are getting triggered by what I do and say. And this is life, which is not engineering. And everybody wants to talk about engineering your life. I mean, I know Gurujis who talk about engineering, and that's the scary part. I mean, you are actually talking about it's not an app. Life is not going to be an app. You can't just say, "Hi, mom, I'm doing fine," means you are fine. No, you are hiding many things. It's there are many things that are not coming out of your heart. You're not having a heart to heart which cannot be put on WhatsApp or Telegram or text. It cannot be perhaps spoken by word. It could be a hug, a touch, a sharing of a cup of tea with your friend or your partner or with your parent. So this part, in the karma, the people keep saying, good karma kya hai? I said, there is no good karma. There is karma. Because when you break an omelette, break an egg, you make it an omelette. But then you have broken an egg. Now you can't,
Put it
some
back.
action has happened. So that is something that people, they genuinely believe, hum अच्छे लोग हैं, इसलिए अच्छा चीज होना चाहिए. You are trying to guarantee, you're trying to ensure your life. But there are no guarantees, and that's what COVID taught us. The most powerful people, the richest people, the Jeff Bezos didn't predict COVID. The what is it? Elon Musk didn't predict COVID. All these great engineers who can create zillion-dollar businesses and trillion-dollar businesses, none of them could predict or prevent COVID. I think a tiny little virus सबको औकात दिखा दिया. And I think that is what we should share to our children. देखो वो जेफ बेजोस ना वो कोविड नहीं पकड़ पाया.
No, and I think you've explained it beautifully, this cause and effect. I think everything we want, okay, if I did this, I will get this. If I do this, I will get this. But I really liked, I mean, or at least I was intrigued by the title of your book. You said wisdom to survive in a hopeless world. Do you really believe that the world is hopeless, or were you being tongue in cheek?
No, you see, it is the subjective state. We don't know what the world is. The world is what it is. It's an objective reality. But our subjectivity makes it hopeless, hopeful, full of opportunities, full of threats. The world is what it is. It's an object, but we see the world through our subjective lens, which is a major theme in my book. We forget we live in a bubble of subjectivity. And this subjectivity, because everybody around you says, "Arey, the world is collapsing." You start believing. You start believing. Sab bol rahe hain ki, "Arey, duniya to badal." Oh, India is going to the dogs, man. And we start believing it, and that creates anxiety. Dar lagta hai. And then your children are not, and your child is not going to school, and that anxiety you pass on to you. Tu padhai nahi karega, to job kahan se milega? And you see the anxiety on. I watch these reels and TikTok, what was called TikTok before. You have these things that with child, people are actually saying, "Shadi, government job milega, to fir acha ho jayega, because even if I don't work, I will get salary." And that shows an anxiety that I may not get a source of income, or the anxiety that and I've read these videos, very strange videos. The ladki mujhse shaadi karegi, so what if I'm ugly? I'll get a government job and then she'll marry me. And you're like, oh my god, that's talking about so much anxiety. There is so much fear. And I think then when the lockdown happens and you can't step out of your house and all the dhanda is tough, you're like, at least government job to secure tha. But then you envy all your friends who are making more money in private sector. That doesn't go away. That comes with your government job. So that's the thing. So that I think this is what I wanted people to. This hopeless word is a subjective state, not an objective state.
Now, also, you say that we feel hopeless because hope exists. And but isn't hope what keeps us going? Because if we don't have hope and that desire, that light, that is what ignites us and pushes us forward.
So
But it also
hope,
makes us feel hopeless, you know? It's the twin coin.
yes. So one coding creates the other, and that's a great point you have raised. Is because Swarg, because Swarg exists in our imagination, Nark exists in our imagination. One cannot exist without the other. We construct one ki दुनिया अच्छा होने वाला है. And when you tell me that, then बुरा जब होता है तो और दर्द होता है. It's one question. Somebody had once told me a very famous, I mean, not famous story, but told me the story about this person who is like, I was unemployed. Then I was told, if you study and get a degree, you will get a job. So he studied, got a degree, but still didn't get a job. And now he's like, now I was unemployed. Now I'm educated unemployed. The pain is worse. Because now I believe I deserve a job because I'm educated. That time I wasn't sure. I had reason to blame. So we construct ideas when we tell children happily ever after stories every night, and life is not happily even one night. And then you are wondering, did my parents lie to me? And then I started losing faith in authority figures who tell me stories. I have lost hope. Because I was told constantly this life is going to be happily ever after. Or Disney is selling the idea of true love. Completely unscientific concept. But we allow Disney to repeatedly sell the idea of true love. Only now they've shifted it to sisters and brothers and friends. But this true love as an idea is itself a concept. Not telling that, there is different ways of looking at the same thing. They sell one thing again and again, which is a little disturbing idea.
No, it is true. It's because these movies do affect us and they impact us in a bigger way. But my favorite part, and like you said, we need a school of kindness. We also need a school of resilience because this is kind of the key trait. I think throughout your book, I feel that you are saying this is the muscle and this is the one that we really need to develop. But it is so hard. Any tips? Because I know we struggle with it, like even Mansi said, we come back to that circle of hopelessness.
I use this concept a lot in my workshops also when I'm conducting workshops. Rajkumari Matri and Rajkumari Jwala. Mm-hmm. Now, Rajkumari Matri is basically inspired by the fairy tale Princess and the Pea, where this princess goes and sits on a mattress, 20 mattresses, and below there's one pea. And she's like, oh my God, I can't sleep because there was this pebble under my bed. And we're told that is a true princess because she's so sensitive, so sensitive. And there are such stories in Vikram and Vetal series also. This whole idea of the super sensitive person, oh, I'm so fragile, I'm so delicate. And we really admire such people. Oh, she's so fragile, she's so delicate.
I actually wondered why was even Princess and the Pea written? Because that's something that's come to my mind. I have 2 daughters, and that's one story I refuse to read.
And then we have Princess Jwala, who can walk through fire, who is not afraid of fire, and that's resilience. That's saying that tension nahi lene ka life mein. I will manage. For me, Sita is Princess Jwala, and also I'm very careful when I'm using gender. I'm fully aware that I'm using Rajkumari. If I'm using Rajkumari Matri, I cannot use Rajkumar Jwala. You know what I mean? Which is normally what we do, right? Strong man, fragile woman, these kind. And now Disney, again, I'm sorry I use Disney as an example, but even our Bollywood thinks that if a woman has a sword in her hand, she's a feminist.
Yes.
Of course, after she marries and falls in true love, she gives up her sword. Unless she has to save her baby. Then she elegantly picks up the sword again and rides strange horses. But this whole idea of, this approach, resilience is not about the sword. Therefore, I compare Draupadi and Sita. About life, silence can be resilient. It's about going through the daily grind of life, enjoying it. The daily grind of mind can be like Sisyphus suffering in Greek mythology, or enjoying it and looking forward to that toast and butter and cup of tea every day and enjoying it and saying that it's not a prison. I'm not in the jail. I have agency. I have choices. I can take the one place where I have choices is how I react to the situation. Everything other choice can be taken away, but that choice nobody can take away from me, and I will hold on to it. I think that is what we need to enable our children to do, and we should develop it, where we develop resilience in small things. Choti choti baaton. Men say that choti choti baaton ka bura nahi mante. Bura nahi mante. And we can have conversations with nowadays social media. I see some of these reels where they say, "Usne aise bola, to maine aise kiya." I'm like, why are you fighting? They body shamed me, so I went to jail. I said, it's okay to be body shamed. It's perfectly fine. I don't have to take it badly. I will have another cupcake. So I'm not going to be shamed just because you are shaming me. I'm not going to be shamed. That power is where agency lies, is what I try to talk in my story. Resilience comes when we discover this power within us. I don't have to take your comment. I will consider it. It could be a good comment. It could be a bad comment. So, खाना परोसते हैं, लेकिन खाना तो मेरा responsibility है ना. खाना परोसना आदमी कुछ भी परोस सकता है. But I will say that, no, this is too much. I don't like this. I like this. So it's that.
No, and I really like the way you've brought out Sita and Draupadi, because it's a great comparison. Because actually, when I read your book, you see that resilience in Sita. Because a lot of times, we are always concerned, is Sita meek, or is she really a very strong character? And I think you brought a lot of clarity to that. With that, I turn it over to Siddhi. Very beautiful book. Very, very helpful in these times.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Devdutt. Firstly, congratulations and thank you for writing such a thought-provoking book, which has come at a really perfect time. So my first question to you is, how do you think hope is related to religion, faith, and, belief? Because there are a lot of correlations to Hindu mythology in the book.
So really, when I use words like spirituality, I mean deep psychology. It's just deep psychology, because psychology as a subject was invented only 100, 200 years ago. So nobody used the word psychology. We use the word spirituality, because spirituality meant the mind. That's all it meant. Spirit basically meant the mind. People thought it was the breath. Then they said it was something else. They didn't know this word mind. Now we know this word mind. And religion basically is when you use psychology and you use these beliefs of people for political and economic ends. That's it. But what matters is that every human being is going through psychological issues 24/7. We are constantly going through, humans are not born with a manual saying this is the purpose of your life. ये करना है तुम्हें कल. We are being told constantly by the world, तुमको ये खाना है, ये पहनना है, ये करना है, वो करना है, ये अच्छा है, ये बुरा है. We're constantly receiving these inputs, and we are creating our own operating system and saying, okay, ठीक है, ये अच्छा है, ये बुरा है. And sometimes it's crisis. You're like, oh, this doesn't make sense to me. I don't know what to do. And therefore, we look at authority figures and we look at stories. And stories are basically the voices of our ancestors telling us, this, perhaps you should look at life this way. Perhaps you should look at life that way. And I think that's what mythologies do. So it's not about religion. Religion is about trying to control you. So it's just one option which comes. If you're born in a Jain family, you're born in a Buddhist family, you're born in a Christian family, there'll be one way saying, देखो हमारे साथ रहना है तो ऐसे रहना है. So it's about control. So that is part of life. You get that also. But the story part is interesting, because the stories contain many more things beyond control. It will talk about why you control, why do your parents want to control you, why is society trying, and why are you trying to control society? Now, those things emerge in stories. That's why I focus on the story part of it more than the rules part of it.
Okay, so do you feel that, social media is to be blamed for the spread of negativity and hopelessness, which you have also mentioned in the book?
So people are negative, and in the old days, I don't know about ladies' toilets, but in gents' toilets, whenever you go, there would be graffiti with very graphic and horrifying things written on it, abusive words, people being shamed. I used to see this in every toilet, every public toilet. Now what has happened is that graffiti which used to happen inside the toilet is being permitted on a common platform because of technology. And everybody thought that once you give freedom to people and then democratize communication, we'll all say lovely things to each other. We didn't realize that inside our heart, especially if you can hide your identity, all your negative things will come out and you will vomit out poison on a soldier. And that has come as a rude shock to people. All psychologists could have told you that. But when anybody would tell you that, once you get freedom, and where it takes a lot of courage not to be negative and to be positive. It takes a lot of work to, our natural instinct is to snarl and bite. And that's what social media has enabled. And it has also brought in a lot of good things, because now I have access to the whole world quickly.
Yes.
I am not isolated from the global
Yeah, I was just
ecosystem.
going to ask you that. Don't you feel that it's also connecting a lot of people together through the media, through the
Yeah,
social
so we
media?
get everything. And now it is up to us. How do we uh, correlate it? The fact is, we will be drawn, and these technologies are designed to make you an addict. And because that's how they make their money. They make their money by, it's legalized addiction, which is being allowed. And maybe 100 years later, people will talk about the evil empires that were being built, but we are effectively working very consciously using science and technology to make children, make the next generation addicts. Now, this is good when you're very old and nothing to do. Then you just love the whole day, you can do the infinite
Scrolling and
scroll.
browsing.
But when you have school, when you have jobs, when you have work to do, then that is not good. But
Obviously.
that's life. No, life, maybe you'll always get these. You can't escape this. You can't create a space where everything works. It's up to you to switch off the phone and keep it aside.
Hmm. Okay. Do you think that, hope always leads to positivity? Or do you think that, it can also be a source of stress at times? If you're being too hopeful about something and it doesn't end up as per your wish. So do you think it's also a source of stress?
So, I love Krishna's famous line in the Bhagavad Gita, Fal ki chinta mat karo.
Huh. Right.
Right. But he's also called the Rasik. उसको रस बहुत पसंद है. रस कहाँ से आता है? फल से आता है. Because he is the Rasika Priya. He enjoys the good things in life. So he enjoys all the flavors of every fruit. But he's also telling you, phal ki chinta mat karo. Enjoy it when the fruit is in your hand. But when you're sowing the seed, don't be sure, because you can't control its germination. You can't control its sprouting out. You can't control the leaves. You can't control that when the fruit emerges, before you pluck it, somebody else will take it away. So there's a lot of process between you sowing the seed and eating the fruit. So, फल की चिंता मत करो. So, while yes, फल की इच्छा है, चिंता मत करो. So, I want a better life, or I want a good spouse, or I want a good friend, or I want a good time in today's party. But you know what? If it is not, I have my escape button. I have a plan B. I have my insurance policy to protect me. I go for a party, I hope it will be a great time. We'll have a rocking time. And we all have gone through that, right? You think it'll be a great time, and you go and the party turns out to be really boring, and you're like, oh my God, I want to go home and eat chocolates. Which is your plan B, which is fine, because parties sometimes don't work out. And sometimes you're shocked when you go to a party expecting it to be terrible and it turns out to be fun. So, phal ki chinta mat karo is what Krishna says. And I think that's a great line to have.
Perfect. Okay, one last question. So, being moms, how can we instill this feeling of positivity and hope in our kids? Who, it's not easy being moms. So, what tips do you suggest?
I think storytelling is an easy way where you tell different stories, but don't always give a positive ending. Make people ask the difficult questions. It's okay. Let them experience jealousy through stories. Let them experience hatred and greed through stories. Don't give a advice. Have a conversation. Don't go into judge mode. This is right. This is wrong. Yes, which is what we're trained to do. Unfortunately, this is the colonized mindset. ये सही है, ये गलत है, ये this is वो अच्छा था इसलिए उसको अच्छा चीज मिला, वो बुरा था. Try to talk about the ambiguity in the safe ecosystem called a story.
That's so true. We do that most of the time. We just if we are telling them a story, we will pass our judgments and tell them, okay, this is right, this is wrong. So I think we need to stop that.
In the safety of the storytelling, you may do this in other parts of your life, but in the story time, at least give yourself that 1 hour saying that I will not judge any character. Let my child say whatever he wants. Ram to loser tha. Achha, now you're like, oh, I don't think I should say that. But you're like, why do you think it's a loser? What do you think he should have done? Achha. Then he starts realizing, oh, there is a lot of thought going on over here. But ye kaise karu, wo kaise karu? What do you think Sita should have done? Oh, she should have stayed at home. Oh, that's a very good idea. So that's a nice idea. And you start asking, why do you think it is a nice? And that sort of reveals your child's way of thinking. And he also gets engaged that my mother wants to listen to me. My opinions matter. That's a very important thing for children. Because they're not giving me orders. They are telling me, Acha, tumhara opinion, at least for this 1 hour of storytelling, it's not about telling the story. It's about discussing the story. I think that's the big learning I have had in 25 years of storytelling. Is, of course, when I'm doing a one-man session, I start becoming the child. I ask, "Arey, but wo to acha nahi tha," and then I go this way and that way, and I start. The child gets confused, but I can see the eyes lighting up because they're like, "Oh, mera paas bhi ye
But he
question
wants
tha."
to listen to my point.
Because he's like, "Oh, yeah, I thought like that also, and I think Ravan is very cool." And I'm like, ha, Ravan is very cool. So you're okay if I steal your tiffin box, right? I'll just take away your tiffin box. Because Ravan would do that, right? Ha, ha, ha. And then he's like, no. And I'm now correlating abduction to tiffin box. I mean, it's not the same thing.
Yeah, but
he's realizing the sense of violation which happens. Why does he not like a bully? But we have to allow children's mind, their minds are still fresh and they're ready to, but it requires practice. I mean, working with children has not been easy. Trust me, I don't have children.
Ask us.
But I have worked with a lot of children over the years and I have learned, that I've learned now the art. I do a lot of performance and after 1 hour, I'm like, I need my coffee.
No, but that's a very interesting point. I'll keep that in mind. So thank you so much, Devdutt, and over to you, Upasna.
Thank you so much, Siddhi. Hello, sir. It's such a pleasure to see you. I'm Upasna from Gurgaon Moms.
Hi.
And I've been a huge fan of your work. Jaya has been a book I've recommended to so many people. I can't even begin to tell you. So my first question to you would be, what drew you towards mythology?
So it was a hobby, honestly, like anybody else. I was reading Amar Chitra Katha, I was reading Chanda Mama, nothing great. But over time, I realized there was a lot not being told. There were stories that were not being told. So I began by just capturing the stories. Then over time, after reading so many stories, I started analyzing the stories. I said, what is that? And then people kept saying myth is not true. And I said, okay, what is truth? So I think it became just an area of interest for me. And over time, this area of interest, which was my personal, private hobby space, turned into a business opportunity. So it happened organically and it became I didn't expect this to happen, but then I started writing on mythology and people loved what I wrote. And I realized gradually that nobody writes on mythology. We have a country where mythology is celebrated, but we don't write about it. We're ashamed of words like mythology. And I'm like, okay, iska matlab kya hai? And then I realized only white guys write on it. Only the white guys are writing on it. And then we get angry. Arey, sab white hegemony. I said, log likhte nahi hai. But we will blame them. They're at least writing. So now let me write and see it from my point of view. And then the world opened up because it forced me to look at myself, my truth, my life, my work. And I think that's how these books come. So I'm sharing all this wonderful world of knowledge that I experience.
That's lovely. That's really lovely to hear. So your book is titled Hope. What's the one thing that gives you hope? One thing that you see that gives you hope?
I think what gives me hope is that I find people are generous. In every society where we go, I was in China sometime and I saw there were people who would try to steal things from you or trick you. But there were also people who were kind and generous and would help you for no reason. For no reason. They would just help you. Or I would see that in a plane when I'm traveling, on airports. I travel a lot and I saw there are always people who help people. A traffic jam happens and someone just appears and tries to do the traffic clearance. And I'm like, why is he doing this? Somebody just comes out of the car and solves. And it happens all the time. Not everybody, but there's one person who is generous at that moment. And he may not be a generous person all his life, but at that moment, I think these incidents give me hope constantly.
That's really beautiful to hear. So Gurgaon Moms, we're a moms group. And moms are very synonymous with the word hope. So what's the one phrase or the one thing that stayed with you that your mom, that you would relate to hope?
So my mother would always tell me that, life will go through, there is a word in Odia, we are Odias, she would use a word called Sabudinia. Sabudinia sab din ka.
Okay.
Sab din ka nahi hai. So she would always tell me things that, when we go to a party, she'll say, this food is not sab din ka. What we call dal chawal. There is a dal chawal in your life. So, jitna bhi amir banega, last mein tere dal chawal chahiye. So this sab din ka thing was something which is very strong, embedded in my head by my mom. And this whole, what is your dal chawal? बिकॉज वो तुम सिल्वर की थाली में दो, सोने की थाली में दो, मिट्टी के बर्तन में दो, दाल चावल होता है. If you're lucky, it will be fresh, hot. If you're lucky, you'll share it with a friend. But dal chawal hamesha rahega, sabudiniya hamesha rahega. I think that was a very important lesson, which I think it was also about resilience. That yaad rakho, make sure that that is always there in your life, or you can at least give that to your friend. I think that has been a kind of grounding for me. जितना भी बड़े हो जाओगे, जितना भी पैसा कमाओगे, दाल चावल का सबूत. So she always say this. I think that was one thing which I remember.
I love that word. I'm going to use it on my children today itself and tell them what you said. And I think it's really, really an important tool to keep children grounded. So all your books have these lovely illustrations.
Yeah.
And they're so endearing. Why were they left out in Hope? What was the reason?
So I am experimenting with this. I love illustrating things. So now I have done books where there are writing and illustrations, but slowly I'm moving into books which are only illustrations and some which are only text. So these are experiments. Also to focus on the idea, because sometimes the visuals also have the ability to draw you away from the writing. So because this was a self-help book and we want really people to use this in there's a lot of bullet points, very clarity, very simple way of, very difficult to write this book because it's also a lot of psychology and I was very clear, I don't want to deal with mental issues which only a psychiatrist can handle. So you'll see many times I repeat that if you think it's clinical, please go to a professional help. So I didn't want, so my style of drawing we felt would be also very light-hearted in a subject which is slightly more, it's not heavy and depressing and heavy, but it is also, illustrations have a way of distracting your attention. So I said, let's experiment with this. And I think it worked, the size of the book and everything. So it was just an experiment. It was not like a fully thought through idea. But yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm writing a lot of books now also with lots of illustrations, with just one line text for children mostly. As you know, I love working with children, I love with adults, I work with different groups. So this was one more experiment.
Yeah, I like that about the size of the book. It's not daunting to anybody and it's very, very readable, the text, etc. Thank you so much. It's been an honor. And now, namaste and over to you, Mansi.
Thank you, Devdutt, and thank you, Upasana. Devdutt, that means that Upasana is missing the text and the illustrations together, and you'll have to come back to your the everyday part of it, which is I don't know if I'm getting the pronounce. Sabaduniya is that
Sabdinka in Hindi.
Yeah, Sabdinka together. Okay, so you can get done with your experiments, but फिर वापस घर आना है, and you'll have to build that dal chawal. So I hope that you're immensely successful with the experiments.
Thank you so much.
But that was incredible, and I don't know which part of this conversation, I mean, there's so many parts of it that we're all taking back in different formats. But I before we conclude, a question from all of us. Sorry, there's a question from all of us, and I've seen that in your book where so many people reached out to you with different messages. How did you keep the hope alive in adversity whilst everything was happening last year?
I did panic about 3 months down the line. Initially, I did the tea time tales. If you remember, I genuinely believed it will end in 2-3 months. And then I said, I can't continue. I stopped the tea time tales and the panic started building up for me. And I really, really got lost. And I would tell my friends, I would call my friends, and I have no problems admitting that I am panicking. I have learned that in life that, just as when you have a stomach upset, don't hide it. Tell people you have a stomach upset because we are embarrassed to talk about a stomach upset or something. Don't ever hide the fact that you have a mental issue, you're feeling depressed, because they go at the early stages for help so that it doesn't blow out of proportion. And I remember at that time, I was very, very anxious and my friend sat with me and my income had stopped completely because my lectures had stopped completely. And I was like, oh my God, how will I pay my EMI? All those things which were irrational. I mean, logically, I had nothing to fear, but my emotions were going out of control. And I think I spoke to friends at that time. And that has always been important. I believe reaching out to people at the right time, and I allow people to reach out. When people talk to me, and I even in parties, I don't just do small talk. I invariably direct the conversation towards issues, and somehow, somewhere in the middle of the conversation, it's like one of the many things in the buffet. You have small chat, you have bitchy chat, you have time pass chat, but you need to have one or two serious chats all the time. And I think so people, my friends have been kind to me. They have helped me out at that time, and I hope to be kind to them when they need help. Because we all go through these days, right? And I think that has helped me keep the hope alive. A good network of friends.
This is so nice to hear that someone in your position and stature admitting that it is okay to feel like that and it's okay to talk about it. And I think that's what makes you you. And I'm assuming that party to be like you are the musician strumming all this wisdom and there's a group of people just listening stumped. But really, this has been an incredible chat. Thank you so much for doing this and wishing you so much love and success with hope. And I really feel that your why of why you wrote this book is fulfilled.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Devdutt.